Good morning, this is Dr. Patrick Live, and also the president of Bikers Against Trafficking. And today we're going to talk about really the influence in our culture that really drives any type of addiction that's related to sex. You can't really eliminate human trafficking without addressing the buyer, the person who's paying for the services, whether you want to call the buyer the John, whether you want to call them just the buyer, whatever term you want to use, that has to be addressed. And in my opinion, we have created all kinds of issues. So today we're really going to talk about how it relates to the church or Christians or people of faith. So a few years ago, I was leading a workshop that was over 3 days in the mountains in Western Washington. And everybody who attended was predominantly elders of a church, church leaders and deacons and their spouse, or pastors. So as part of this conference, we did a lot of teaching, and then I set aside 30-minute appointments that people could sign up and just kind of come talk and process anything that might have been triggered, because I didn't want them just to be holding that and not having somewhere to go. So I wanted to be able to direct them to get some healing or something. What I discovered was every single one of those appointments, whether it was the man or the woman or together, they would come. Every single one of them brought up an issue of sexuality. So there was these sexual dysfunction issues. Either there was too much, not enough, or there was pornography, or something was going on, and they were really struggling. The one thing that every one of those appointments had together was that it was a secret. No one told anybody. And that's one of the biggest problems we have in communities of faith. We build a culture of secrecy inadvertently. It's not like we want to do that. We talk about the importance of being authentic and real, but if you're a leader and you're real and you're struggling, you're no longer a leader, because someone's going to kick you out or penalize you. If you're a pastor and you're struggling with sex addiction or you're struggling with pornography, they're going to boost you from your job. And so inadvertently, we create this culture that says, if you're having a problem, don't tell anybody. Thus, the problem gets deeper. And if I'm a leader that has a problem, that's going to affect me, and then that's going to affect everybody in my circle. So how do we address it? Number one, we have to reframe addiction and sex as it relates to the church. We have to somehow convince churches and denominations that they need to work together. A lot of times there's small churches and they don't have the resources, and there's large churches who do. And there's this idea that this is my church and that's your church. No, it's God's. We need to work together to help reframe the situation. We have to provide education, which is more than awareness. Awareness is like a sticker. Oh, that's happening. Education is it's changing your brain. You're becoming an educated person about what's going on. And then we need to provide sex addiction groups. So you can model after Celebrate Recovery, but they can't be men and women together. They have to be men groups, women groups in every church, which means if you're a small church and you can't provide that resource, you need to link up with other churches to provide the resource together. So churches need to be partnering. Groups of faith need to be partnering so that everybody has access to that. So that's the first thing. We have to reframe addiction and sex in the church. The second thing, we have to redefine what a godly man is. We have this image of a person who doesn't struggle. That's godliness. Well, we need to redefine a godly man as someone who does struggle, but who seeks help. It's not a weakness, it's a strength to seek help. I work with a lot of first responders as well, and they go through all kinds of horrifying events. And there is this culture in law enforcement, unfortunately, and fire and everywhere else, where if you're struggling or you've got a problem or you can't handle something, you don't tell somebody because it could get you in trouble. We have to redefine what a godly man looks like, what a godly woman looks like. You can be godly and still struggle and have issues. That doesn't define you. What you do about it defines you. So if you're struggling, get help. That's okay. That's a sign of strength. The third thing we have to do is we have to understand what human trafficking and sex addiction, for the person who's buying sex, what it does, how it impacts the brain. There's all kinds of issues about that, and we'll explain it more. But what we have to understand is it's all about a drug. The reason somebody has a point of release or an orgasm, is because they want the drug that gets released in their brain. Oxytocin, dopamine, and other things around the neural pathways that make you feel technically high and make you feel good. Well, the things that give you a higher hit of that drug are newness, something that's new, or something that's risky, because that gives you more of a sense of adrenaline, and so you get a higher hit of dopamine, or the thing that we don't realize, something that repulses us. So you can educate people all you want about how horrific it is, but then if they have a sex act with that horrific image in their mind, they actually get more dopamine. So even though mentally they don't want to do it, their experience is, oh my goodness, I get more of this drug, and if I'm an addict, I want more of the drug. So we have to be aware of that, and we have to be careful. The fourth thing we have to do is we have to address social media, which is basically soft pornography. There are so many sites, and they're like an appetizer in a restaurant. They whet the appetite and direct you to something harder. You have to be aware that it's not just porn sites. A lot of people never go on the porn sites, but they're full of social media sites where all kinds of little things are being done, and it entices somebody to drop in. It entices somebody to go buy somebody or to buy an act of sex. We have to figure out a way to address that. And lastly, we have to understand that the user or the John has to break denial, because all the education in the world isn't going to make a difference unless they want to change, if they see what they're doing is a problem. So they have to be open to fight for change, because unless God does a miracle, that change takes work, that change takes time. I work with people who are battling sex addiction. I work with people who have bought and been thrown in prison, and just horrific people, and people who are just struggling as well. It's not easy. In my opinion, sex addiction is the hardest addiction to fight, but you can fight it. But you have to see yourself as you really are, and you can't do it alone. You need help. So we need to create a culture where help is provided, shame and guilt are addressed, and it's not poured more on people. So if you have some ideas, put them in the comments below. Reach out to me. Let's make a difference. Together, we can reach one, and then you know what? We can reach another one. My whole envision of what God does is God reaches down, grabs our hand, and then he wants us to reach out and grab someone else's hand and draw that hand of God to that hand of the person, and then let go where God can move. In this issue of human trafficking, the church has an incredible role. Communities of faith have an incredible role, but they're going to have to redefine it if we're going to make a difference. Peace out, Doc.